The first time I heard Gordon call Nathan just another back-end grunt, I was elbows deep in rewriting his disaster of a product roadmap slide deck. Again. He was pacing like a cracked-out TED talker in front of the conference room glass, yapping into the VC's earbuds like he was the second coming of Jobs. "We've got a killer engineering squad," he said. "Tight, fast, loyal. They move because I push them to move." And Nathan? Sitting 3 doors down in what used to be the break room, now repurposed into a dev pod, writing the very code Gordon kept waving around like a baton in his symphony of bullshit. I watched Nathan through the slatted blinds, calm, tired, wearing the same zip-up fleece he always did, stained with printer ink from God knows when. He didn't even blink at the lie. That code? 90% his. From the database schema to the last damn line of CI/CD automation, it had Nathan's fingerprints. Gordon? He didn't know how to open the terminal without Slack searching a junior dev first. But he had a jawline, a lacrosse scholarship, and a VC uncle. So here we were, dancing on a $400 valuation, and the guy who built the engine was being treated like a weird little troll in the server cave. I tried. God help me, I tried to elevate Nathan, suggested he join the pitch meetings, that he walk investors through the architecture. But Gordon just laughed, clapped me on the shoulder like a locker room bro, and said, "Let's keep the wizard behind the curtain, yeah?" I remember the moment Nathan started detaching, not angry, not sullen, just colder, sharper. I'd walked in with a decaf and found him labeling old thumb drives, each marked with date ranges and build versions in his tiny, perfect handwriting. A man archiving his own legacy like a funeral director prepping a body. I asked what he was doing, and he just said, "Just good hygiene, things break." What I didn't see, what he never pointed out, was the manila folder tucked into the back of his drawer. Inside, a printed, annotated copy of his original offer letter, countersigned, dated, and highlighted like a lawyer's last will. Gordon had never seen it. Never even read it, I bet. It was from the pre-incorporation days when everything was still dream talk and ramen noodles. But Nathan had read every damn line, and he knew what was missing. They thought he was passive, shy, maybe even socially broken. But Nathan didn't need a stage to write revolutions. He needed silence. Power didn't excite him. Accuracy did. And the more Gordon paraded around like he was Zeus in Allbirds, the more Nathan listened. Logged. Tracked. It wasn't compliance, it was alignment. And I should have realized then, when he stopped correcting people calling Gordon the founder, that he wasn't tuning out. He was locking in. By the way, if you're still listening and you haven't subscribed yet, go ahead and do it. Over 97% of people forget, but it helps more than you know. Hit like too. It's how we keep digging up stories like this one. And trust me, this one only gets messier from here. Anyway, a week later, Gordon called an emergency optics alignment meeting. Translation? He wanted to rewrite the origin story before the next investor round, told the designer to remove Nathan from the founding slide. I watched her hesitate, mouse hovering over Nathan's little grayscale avatar. "He's just a dev," Gordon barked. "He gets equity, not credit." Nathan never said a word. He'd already stopped drinking the office coffee, started bringing his own thermos, same time, every day, 1 sugar, no milk. Later that night, I stayed late to finish the updates. I passed his little closet room and saw him with a scanner, quietly feeding pages through, not code, documents, contracts, time-stamped commits printed out like receipts. No smile, no rush, just a man building a time bomb out of paperwork while everyone else played dress-up with someone else's platform. They called him the brain in the basement, like it was a joke. But brains don't bark. They observe. They wait. And sometimes, they remember the clause you forgot to delete. The night before the Series C investor pitch, Gordon stood in front of the whiteboard drawing boxes and arrows like a drunk toddler trying to explain quantum physics. "We need to tighten up optics," he said, underlining the word polish 3 times like it was a battle plan. "No more cargo shorts in the war room. We're a $400 company, not a garage band." Translation: Nathan wasn't welcome. The man who wrote 90% of the platform, back-end, security layer, middleware was being benched for not being presentable. Presentable, in Gordon speak, meant having abs and a Patagonia vest. The dev team sat there in silence. Half of them were too new to know Nathan had practically raised the codebase from embryo. The other half were already trained to look busy and keep their heads down. Me? I was about to ask if Nathan would at least join the Q&A portion, but Gordon shot me a look like I just farted in church. He's not client-facing, he said. Let's have him revise the documentation instead. Focus on value add behind the scenes. So they sent him a JIRA ticket. A fucking JIRA ticket. Titled, Urgent, Rewrite Onboarding Docs for Investor Clarity. No credit, no invite. Just the digital equivalent of a broom and a mop. When I brought it up in Slack, our head of product DM'd me. It's about presentation. You know how Nathan is. Yeah, I knew exactly how Nathan was. He didn't schmooze, he didn't slide into DMs, but when the prod servers caught fire at 3 a.m., guess who had the rollback script memorized? When a new dev accidentally wiped a container instance, guess who had redundant snapshots saved in an unlabeled folder called just in case? Nathan was the reason this Frankenstein startup hadn't collapsed under the weight of Gordon's delusion. Still, he took the humiliation like he took everything else. Quietly. I watched him nod at the task assignment, click into the Confluence editor, and begin rewriting a doc he originally wrote from scratch, back when we had 3 employees and a pizza budget. No complaints, no Slack vent. Just one small new behavior, backups. Suddenly, he was cloning repos to encrypted drives, naming folders with specific timestamps, printing out old commit logs and diagrams, all methodical. All emotionless, like a forensic accountant prepping for a very specific kind of storm. Meanwhile, the new devs were drowning. Gordon had fast-tracked 3 junior engineers to senior-level visibility for the pitch demo. None of them could explain the auth layer. One of them asked me if our API used GraphQL or REST, and I had to physically walk away so I didn't scream. Another tried to push a change to prod during lunch and brought the whole thing down for 6 minutes. 6, on demo week. Nathan patched it from the hallway without saying a word, just opened his ThinkPad, typed like death himself, and handed it back. Then he went back to documenting like nothing happened. Gordon didn't even say, thank you. He was too busy practicing hand gestures in the mirror. That night, I stayed behind. The lights were off in Nathan's corner, but I could see the soft glow of his second monitor. He wasn't writing code. He was copying contract files. I recognized the folder tree. Legal, onboarding, IP clauses, NDA versions. He was building a timeline, not of product, of rights, ownership, signatures, all the things no one thought the quiet guy noticed. And I knew then, somewhere deep in my gut, that this wasn't a man who'd lost his seat at the table. This was a man building a new table, one with a locking drawer, a notarized key, and a receipt folder thicker than our burn rate spreadsheet. They could ban him from the meeting, but they couldn't stop him from owning the blueprints. And sooner or later, someone was going to ask a question those junior devs couldn't answer. And when that happened, no pitch deck on earth would be enough to save Gordon's smug, vest-wearing ass. You're not a founder, Nathan. Let's not confuse contributions with control, Gordon said, smiling with those freshly whitened veneers like he was doing Nathan a favor by letting him breathe near his office. It was a Friday leadership sync, and Gordon had just wrapped a call with the lead investor, said things were moving fast and we needed to tighten narrative control. That's when he dropped it. We'll handle equity later. For now, stay focused. The way Nathan froze, just for a blink, you wouldn't notice unless you'd spent as much time watching his face as I had. Not out of romance, out of respect, out of pity, out of awe, maybe. The guy hadn't taken a vacation in 3 years. Kept every version of every deployment tagged and indexed in a system only he understood. And Gordon had the balls to call him non-founding support, like he was a fucking intern who wandered in off the street. No one said a word. You could feel the call die. That awkward silence where everyone's looking at their webcam thumbnail, pretending to check Slack. Gordon plowed ahead like nothing happened, muttering about asset centralization and IP clarity as if saying it enough times made it true. The code belongs to the company, he said, flipping through the deck he'd stolen half from Nathan's architecture outlines. It was built under company time, on company hardware, by company resources. It's clean. Clean. Sure, if by clean you mean never executed a formal assignment of rights, never followed up on that IP clause from the first offer, and never actually listed the code on the Schedule A that was supposed to go with the IP transfer. Because here's the dirty little truth. Gordon never did the paperwork, and Nathan never reminded him. While the rest of the execs gave tight-lipped nods and muttered, "Makes sense," I saw Nathan lean forward, slowly, click something off screen. A second later, he pulled up his email, typed quietly. FWD Original Offer Letter IP Retention Clause. No subject line flourish, no bolded call-out, just one document, one clause, one time-stamped receipt of silence, sent to his personal address. Gordon moved on like a drunk conductor on a runaway train, assigning tasks to the new CTO, who didn't even know what a data migration involved, and patting himself on the back for securing another round of visionary bridge funding. I muted my mic. I think I laughed. Not because it was funny, because I was watching a man light a fuse with both hands and think the heat on his face was success. That weekend, the company Slack went quiet. Nathan stopped replying to tickets. No excuses, no ooh-oh message. He still pushed patches, still kept the system stable. But he didn't reply, didn't clarify anything. The new devs kept flooding the channel with panicked questions like, "What's this data sanitizer script for?" Or, "Who owns this webhook dependency?" No answers, just time ticking forward. By Monday, Gordon had doubled down. "We own everything," he said on the all hands. "Every line of code, every integration, it's ours." He even threw in a smirk for good measure. "We've done the diligence, don't worry." Nathan wasn't on the call. He was in the office, down in his little repurposed storage closet, printing. I passed him while getting coffee. He had the office printer tray pulled open and was flipping through printouts, contracts, email chains, file tree diagrams. No panic, just a man assembling proof, not of effort, of ownership. I stood in the kitchen staring at my mug. The company logo had started to fade from all the dishwasher runs. I remember thinking that was poetic. We were all pretending this place had permanence. But Nathan knew better. He didn't need to be called founder to be one. He'd already done the work. He'd just stopped reminding anyone. Because the moment Gordon claimed that code like it was his birthright, Nathan stopped treating the company like a job and started treating it like evidence. By the time the next leadership call came around, Nathan didn't even show up. But his commits, they were still coming. Subtle changes, deeply efficient, untraceable by the half-trained juniors Gordon kept hiring like they were Pokemon. I checked the repo once out of curiosity. The README had a new line. Do not delete, do not duplicate, do not assume. That's when I knew. Nathan wasn't out. He was almost done. It started with a whisper in the executive Slack channel, one of those threads where only the chosen few get to speak and the rest of us pretend not to watch. Would it be feasible? The new VP of Strategy asked, to rebuild the core from scratch? No names, no blame, just a cold-blooded sentence hanging there like a noose. And Gordon, like the idiot showman he was, jumped in with both feet. Cleaner anyway, he said. New blood, new architecture. Let's own it outright this time. Outright. That was the word that did it. Like Nathan had been squatting in the code base and the company was finally ready to fumigate. They spun it as a technical refresh. The VP even pitched it in the all hands like it was some kind of gift. This is a great opportunity to modernize, decentralize, and eliminate technical debt, which is corporate for we think we can outbuild the guy we just screwed. They assembled a strike team, 3 juniors and a dev manager who looked like he still used Tumblr unironically. None of them had been there during the early builds. None of them understood that Nathan didn't just code functionality. He coded intuition. The kind of logic you don't teach in boot camps. The kind you earn by sweating through 3 a.m. database crashes with no one to call but your own reflection. The first attempt to replicate the job queue logic bricked staging for 2 days. They patched it with borrowed scripts from GitHub, then realized Nathan had threaded in an internal token check that only fired under specific load conditions. They tried to mirror the webhook processor and forgot the deduplication layer. Suddenly, clients were getting duplicate events like spam from a possessed server. Then came the database schema. No one could explain why the audit logs were hashed differently in prod versus dev. One of the juniors guessed it was just legacy cruft. Nathan had designed it that way to prevent internal tampering. Cruft, my ass. I watched all this unfold like a front row spectator at a slow motion car crash. I wanted to warn them, but Nathan didn't. And I wasn't about to stick my neck out when the man himself was sharpening knives in silence. He didn't gloat. That wasn't his style. He just withdrew, smiled less, ate lunch at his desk with headphones on. But what he did start doing was meticulous in a way that chilled me. Every commit got a full message. Every message had a timestamp reference and source branch log. Every Slack convo with product or design was copied to a personal workspace. He archived ticket comments. He saved Notion change logs. He even exported our Zapier automation history. Like he was prepping for a trial no one knew was coming. I caught a glimpse of his file structure once. External SSD, folders labeled by quarter, cross-referenced with contract IDs. It looked more like a litigator's discovery folder than a developer's backup. And he never once called it out. Never once posted some passive-aggressive for the record message in Slack. He let them keep fumbling in the dark while he built the flashlight they'd never ask for. Meanwhile, Gordon started using buzzwords like proprietary fork and custom rebuild in investor calls. Total bullshit. There was no rebuild. There was a wreck in progress, and the only person who knew how to keep the engine running was sitting 3 floors below in a windowless cave, quietly documenting his own betrayal. The irony? They still expected him to support the new team. Consult, if needed, the CTO wrote. Nathan responded with a thumbs-up emoji. That was it. No guidance, no rescue. Just a single pixelated thumb floating like the last middle finger of a man who already knew how this would end. By month's end, the new devs had burned through $48,000 in contractor hours, and still hadn't rebuilt a single subsystem without pulling from Nathan's original code. And yet, no one dared admit it aloud. Gordon spun it as a hybrid transition model in the update deck. Legacy-powered, he said with a straight face. What he didn't know, what none of them knew, was that the so-called legacy had been mapped, cloned, notarized, and time-stamped with Nathan's name on every line that mattered. They were trying to rewrite history in real time. But Nathan had already printed the original, and every minute they sank deeper into their rebuild, he tightened the noose one silent receipt at a time. The conference room smelled like new money and fake confidence, lavender-scented air freshener, catered pastries no one would eat, and Gordon's ego radiating through his unbuttoned collar. This was it. Financing day. The $130 million Series C round. The one Gordon had been swaggering toward for 6 months like a frat boy prepping for prom. He strutted in with his deck loaded, his jaw tight, and that manic gleam in his eye like he already knew how it would go. Because he did. At least he thought he did. The board was lined up like spectators at a silent auction, each one pretending they had any idea how the product worked. The lead investors' team sat across from them, polished and perfumed, legal pads open, iPads glowing, styluses twitching like they were already halfway through due diligence. And Nathan? He was seated at the far end of the table, barely visible, like an afterthought. No title slide with his name, no introduction, just technical oversight support. The irony was thick enough to choke on. Gordon launched into the pitch like he was narrating his own victory parade. "Let's cut through the fat," he said, clicking through revenue projections and market potential slides with all the grace of a game show host on Adderall. "Our product is fully proprietary, all code developed in-house, all IP assigned, filed, and secured." He paused for effect, smiled, looked directly at the lead partner, some Harvard MBA in a tailored suit, and said, "We own everything, including the code. Right, sweetheart?" Everyone's eyes followed his glance. They landed on Nathan. He didn't move for a second, just looked back at Gordon with that unreadable expression he wore whenever someone explained his own work to him like he was a trainee. Then, calmly, like he was passing the salt, Nathan reached into his laptop bag and pulled out a single manila envelope. It was thick, crisp, labeled in black Sharpie, offer letter, original. He slid it down the table, smooth as glass, to the investor's legal counsel. At first, no one noticed. Then the lawyer cracked the seal, pulled the document halfway out, and something in her face changed. She didn't blink, didn't speak, just leaned forward, reading like her life depended on it. Then she stopped. Her pen froze mid-scratch, her lips pressed together in that subtle way lawyers do when they've just found a landmine under your shiny new lawn. Gordon kept rambling, unaware he was walking face first into an industrial wood chipper. "We've even started rebuilding key systems to enhance modularity, legacy-free, clean slate, no contributor risk." That last part made Nathan's brow twitch just slightly. Not anger, not smugness, just the tiniest flecks of irony. The lawyer finally raised her hand. Quietly, firmly. "Sorry. Can we pause here for a moment?" The room fell to a low hum of shuffling chairs and throat clears. Gordon's voice faltered mid-sentence. "Is there a concern?" She turned to the lead investor, not to Gordon. "There's a clause here. Schedule A never executed. IP retention language is intact. This isn't an assignment. It's a license, conditional and revocable." Gordon blinked, then laughed. "Oh, that's ancient. We standardized everything after onboarding. Legal's got that squared." Nathan spoke for the first time that morning. "There was no follow-up contract," he said evenly. "I asked twice. Got ignored twice. Clause 6 still applies." The lead investor turned to her associate. "Did we verify the chain of title during diligence?" The associate looked like she'd just swallowed a live spider. "We assumed internal legal had coverage. The clause is valid." That's when the mood shifted. The air got heavy. Board members looked at each other, then at Gordon, who suddenly couldn't find his usual smirk. He reached for the clicker again, but his hand hovered mid-air like he didn't remember what slide came next. "This isn't a problem," he said, louder now, like volume could overwrite the clause. The investor didn't look at him. She was still reading the letter. Highlighted text, annotated margins, signatures dated and countersigned before the company even had a logo. Nathan hadn't just kept receipts. He'd kept them in triplicate and had the timing down to the millisecond. I watched it all unfold like a slow-motion implosion. Gordon still didn't get it. He was flailing for control of a narrative that no longer belonged to him. And Nathan? He just sat back, eyes steady, hands folded, like he'd been waiting for this exact moment since the first time Gordon called him kid in front of the VCs. It wasn't revenge. It was just correction. An error in the system finally getting patched. And the worst part? Gordon didn't even know what line had killed him yet. But Nathan did. And the lawyer? She was about to read it out loud. You could hear the HVAC humming overhead. That was the only sound in the room once the lawyer said, "There's a problem." Everyone else went still, like the oxygen had thinned just enough to make your ears ring and your instincts start screaming. Gordon didn't react at first. His grin stayed plastered in place, but it didn't touch his eyes anymore. I think, deep down, he knew something just shifted. The kind of shift that doesn't make noise, but makes men sweat. The lead investor leaned in, brow furrowed, voice low. What kind of problem? The lawyer didn't answer right away. She held the offer letter at arm's length like it was radioactive. Her finger traced one paragraph, then stopped. She adjusted her glasses, reread it, looked up slowly. Clause 6, retained intellectual property. Creator retains full ownership unless expressly assigned via Schedule A. The whole boardroom turned toward Gordon. His mouth opened, but no words came out. Just a sort of short, confused laugh. That's boilerplate, he said. We standardized everything. Every hire signed the full IP package. She didn't look at him. There is no Schedule A, she said. Not attached, not filed, not referenced in any subsequent contract. The clause is binding. Gordon blinked. Then that's legal's fault. It should have been included. I was told it was. This is minor. We'll fix it. The associate across from her, younger, visibly nervous, cleared his throat. Fixing it now, after 3 product versions, funding rounds, and client data integrations, would trigger a full ownership renegotiation. And if the originator declines, the lead investor cut in, sharp. What's the scope of the code in question? Nathan spoke for the second time that day, calm, almost gentle. 93% of the current code base traces back to my original architecture. Core framework, authentication layer, back-end logic, deployment pipeline. Initial commits are time-stamped, logged, and notarized. He didn't raise his voice, didn't gloat. He just said it like he was reading off a weather report. Gordon made a noise, something between a scoff and a wheeze. You're bluffing. We rebuilt half the system with new devs. Nathan nodded. You tried. But none of the modules deployed in staging ever made it to prod. The rollback logs are in the Git commit history. Tagged by user, you can verify. The silence that followed was different this time. This wasn't awkward. This was final. Cold. The kind of silence that precedes boardroom bloodletting and red-line term sheets. Someone from finance was already looking down at their tablet, scanning the numbers with a ghost-white expression. Because if Nathan owned the foundation, that meant the foundation was not theirs to sell, which meant the round was void, which meant this entire pitch wasn't a launch, it was a liability. Gordon stood up, palms open, voice rising. Look, this is a misunderstanding. This can't derail the round. You've seen the growth. We have traction, market momentum. You don't have title. The lawyer cut in, flat, unmoved. That's what investors care about. But we have equity agreements, he blurted. He owns shares. Shares aren't assignments, she replied, already highlighting the paragraph. And he negotiated this letter before incorporation, before equity was even formalized. This isn't a misunderstanding. It's a structural defect. Gordon turned toward Nathan then, really looked at him, like he was seeing him for the first time. Why the hell didn't you say anything? Nathan's reply was soft, nearly inaudible. I did. Twice. You shrugged. And that was it. The ice had crept in fully now. Nobody moved. Nobody blinked. The money people were already typing, sending messages that would turn into late-night calls, calls that would turn into delays, clawbacks, maybe even lawsuits. Gordon stood there, breath shallow, stuck between a tantrum and a panic attack. And Nathan? He just folded his hands in his lap, looked down at his fingers for a moment, and then back up, expression unreadable. Like a man watching the avalanche he warned them about finally arrive. Like someone who stopped yelling fire because, frankly, he was ready to feel the warmth. The lead investor stood like a switch had flipped behind her eyes. No raised voice, no drama, just the finality of someone who doesn't waste breath on lost causes. She placed the offer letter flat on the table, slid her chair back, and set it clean. We're done here. Funding is contingent on IP clarity. This isn't clear. It's compromised. The air didn't move. No one did. Gordon's mouth opened like he was about to laugh, but nothing came out, just a dry puff of disbelief. Wait. No, come on, we're aligned on outcomes here. This clause, it's a formality. There's context. There's a signature, the lawyer said, not even looking at him. And no valid transfer. He shot back like a kid caught cheating. He worked for the company. It was implied. We had verbal confirmation, an oral assignment. Ask anyone. He knew the intent. Intent doesn't override paper. The lawyer snapped, sharper now, especially when the paper predates incorporation, especially when the retention clause is this explicit. Gordon started pacing. This is nonsense. We're talking semantics. Everyone understood he was part of the team. There's an implicit agreement here. Implied ownership. Implied ownership doesn't stand in court, the investors' counsel said without flinching. There's case law. You didn't execute the Schedule A. You didn't follow up. You didn't secure assignment. You don't own the code. The board began unraveling right then. Someone from operations murmured, "Wait, does this affect the API partnership?" A junior partner whispered to someone from finance. One of the directors had their phone out, already emailing. The temperature in the room dropped like the thermostat had shorted. And Gordon? He just kept talking. Louder. Faster. "We've got value here. You've seen our growth trajectory. Hell, our churn rate is lower than 90% of our comp set. This is salvageable." But no one was listening anymore. Not really. They were calculating. Legal exposure, risk mitigation, valuation collapse. They were running mental math on what it would cost to scrub Nathan's fingerprints from a system he designed cell by cell. And the answer wasn't just money. It was time. Reputation. Trust. Nathan stood up. No dramatics, no mic drop. Just quietly collected his folder, slid his chair back without scraping, and buttoned his jacket like he was leaving a dentist appointment. "You're walking away from everything?" Gordon barked, voice cracking now. "You think you're going to do better on your own?" Nathan paused at the door, glanced back once. "I didn't come here to win, Gordon. I came to confirm what I already knew." And then he was gone. Just like that. No threats, no demands, just a man leaving a building that mistook him for furniture, only to find out, too late, he was the foundation. Behind him, the room descended into chaos. Gordon was pacing and sputtering, trying to save a ship that hadn't just sprung a leak. It had been built on a sinkhole. One director was already asking for a pause on the deal. The lead investor? She just walked, didn't look back. Her legal team followed like storm clouds rolling out of the skyline. I stayed sitting there for a while, watching it crumble. The pitch deck still flickered on the screen. Frozen on some bullshit tagline Gordon paid a branding firm 60K to invent. Own the future. And somewhere, Nathan was already halfway down the block, walking calmly into whatever came next. Because while Gordon was selling a dream, Nathan had quietly kept the deed. By Monday morning, it was everywhere. Not just tech Twitter, TechCrunch, The Information, even a quote-scraping LinkedIn post from some VC bro who once sat near Gordon at a WeWork happy hour. Due diligence failure torpedoes 130-mile-an-hour Series C, the headline said. Founder dispute triggers. Codebase ownership collapse. The takes poured in faster than our Jira tickets ever did. People were dissecting the clause line by line like it was a Supreme Court decision. And at the center of it all was Nathan's name. Just one sentence buried near the end of most articles. Codebase architect retained full rights under pre-incorporation agreement. No formal assignment executed. That sentence did more damage than any zero-day exploit ever could. By noon, 2 other investors had pulled their term sheets. One firm issued a public statement about IP exposure and fiduciary responsibility. Translation: "We're out before the wreckage hits our portfolio." The mood inside the company was pure fallout shelter. Gordon canceled all hands. The board locked down internal comms. The new devs stopped asking questions and started backing up their resumes. Nobody looked each other in the eye. And Nathan? Nathan was gone, like smoke through a vent. No goodbye message, no passive-aggressive Slack post. Just gone. His Git access revoked by HR 5 hours too late. His Slack deactivated after someone finally realized he hadn't technically signed the updated IP clause the rest of us got sneak-dropped 6 months ago. His desk was still clean, no personal photos, just a single post-it under his keyboard. Good luck maintaining auth. But the real story came that night. I was walking out of the building, phone buzzing in my pocket. It was from a number I didn't recognize. One sentence. "Dinner tomorrow?" C. No punctuation, just the initial. I knew who it was. One of the junior partners from the investor team. The one who'd barely spoken during the pitch meeting, but who'd watched Nathan the whole time like he was tracking a fault line no one else saw. I replied, "Yes." No questions. The restaurant was quiet. Upscale, the kind of place where nobody wears logos. Nathan was already seated when I arrived. Same black fleece, same calm demeanor, like none of the past week had left a mark. The partner greeted us both like old friends. No small talk. "I want to build something new," she said, cutting straight into it. "No branding bullshit, no stolen vision, just product. You." Nathan didn't nod, didn't smile, just listened. She laid it out clean. Clean equity, no trick clauses, no phantom vesting. Capital from her family office. Not firm money, not PR-driven VC hype. Just capital. Quiet and committed. She would take care of governance. He would build. I would join in a leadership role if I wanted. No Gordon, no board of frat house sycophants, no press until launch. Nathan sipped his water. "What happens if I walk?" "Then I'll assume you were never really interested in owning what you built," she said. "But I think you are. I think you just needed someone to ask on your terms." He nodded once. Not fast, not slow, just final. We walked out under that dim November sky, and for the first time in a long time, I saw it. Quiet power. Not the kind that throws elbows and hogs credit, but the kind that knows exactly what it's worth and refuses to negotiate with people who need to be reminded. Back at the office, Gordon was probably still refreshing his inbox, praying for an apology that wouldn't come. Nathan had already moved on to cleaner code, cleaner capital, and for the first time since we met, clean respect. 3 months later, the internet lit up again, but this time, the headlines were different. Stealth startup Signal Root unveils DevOps platform with zero downtime migration engine. Quiet launch, no fireworks, no Gordon. Just a clean site, a lean stack, and a product demo so smooth it made half of a Twitter's engineering scene ask the same question. Wait, doesn't this feel familiar? It did. Too familiar. The architecture, same backbone, but it ran faster. Handled scale with half the overhead. Same routing logic, same core queue management, but sleeker, refactored, elegant. It wasn't a copy. It was the original. Built by the original, just with the weight stripped off and the ego cut out like a tumor. The homepage didn't show faces, no founder glamour shots, just a single name in the press release. Platform engineered by Nathan Ellis, original architect of Redacted's codebase. The statement was surgical, precise, legal, and the final nail in a coffin, Gordon was still pretending wasn't his. Because over at his old company, the one he built like a sandcastle on someone else's foundation, things weren't going so well. The last fundraising push had collapsed. With the IP cloud hanging over them like a thunderhead, no serious investor would touch them. A few of the junior devs jumped ship to Signal Root within weeks. HR bled out quietly. Customer support stalled. Clients drifted. Nobody wanted to be the last one holding a license to code that might not even be enforceable. Eventually, the homepage went dark. No press release, no goodbye note, just a 404 error and a cached copy of the last blog post. Reimagining ownership in the new tech landscape. Oh, the irony. I got a text the day they shut the doors, from one of the old ops managers. Just 2 words. He won. But I didn't need the text. I already knew. I saw it when I walked into that small dev conference in Portland where the crowd was thin and the coffee terrible, but the energy felt honest for the first time in years. And there was Nathan, standing at the mic, no slides, no pitch, just a short talk. Titled, Designing for Things You Can't Replace. He talked about clarity, about systems that outlast their creators, about trust, not in people, but in structure. When you write something for a company, he said, you think about performance. But when you write something for yourself, you think about permanence. The room was dead quiet. Then he smiled, just barely. Funny what one clause can do, he said, especially when no one thinks you'll read it.